Thyroid is an organization that provides educational and support services to people who are dealing with a thyroid cancer diagnosis. Obviously, many of them are patients, but equally we're there for the caregivers of the patients. There was a time that anyone who was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, the next step would be to have their thyroid removed. However, the science is moving in the direction of not having everyone have surgery for their thyroid. Many people will have go to a surveillance process where instead of having surgery right away, they'll be watched and evaluated to see if there is actually a need over time to remove the thyroid. And if the patient doesn't need to have their thyroid removed, that changes the whole dynamic, because one of the things that happens after thyroid surgery is we go on medication that simulates the benefit of the thyroid. And many of us don't do as well on thyroid replacement medication as we do with the natural thyroid. When people ask me why should they get involved with Thyroid, my answer is that people who make the journey through their thyroid cancer on their own have a very much more difficult time. They have to do their own research, they have to learn about their disease on their own, and they have to process on their own. Whereas when they meet people who are involved with Thyroid, they have the opportunity to learn from materials that have been put together and medically reviewed, peer-reviewed for accuracy. And then there's this support side, which is so very important. You're not making a journey by yourself. People who have thyroid cancer often are told that, oh, you're so fortunate. If you had to get cancer, you got the good one. And that can be very challenging for people to process. But when you meet people with the organization Thyroid, you're meeting people who have walked that same journey, and they understand what you're going to go through, and they're going to help you to appreciate what your journey is about. And they're going to help you understand that there is no such thing as good cancer. I was diagnosed with papillary thyroid cancer in October of 1995, at a time when my wife was 5 months pregnant with our second child. And for the prior 10 years, I was being treated for sleep apnea, but I didn't have sleep apnea. I had a metastatic tumor in the back of my throat, and when I would lay down and go to sleep at night, the tumor would flop back and cut off my air passageway, and I would have trouble breathing. And I was basically gasping for air all night long. And I went to a series of doctors who prescribed or diagnosed sleep apnea and then prescribed CPAP machine, which really didn't help. And my situation got worse and worse over time, to the point where I was sleeping sitting up in an easy chair with the lights on and the TV on. It was a really very relaxing way to live. Finally, I went to see a surgeon who had me sit in a chair, and it was as simple as him saying, open your mouth. He looked in the back of my throat and he said, the back of your throat's asymmetrical. And that fast, I had a problem, which he then diagnosed as metastatic thyroid cancer, which of course meant that there was a host disease in my thyroid bed. Once I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, the surgeon who diagnosed me said, I can take care of your thyroid tumor on your thyroid bed, but I can't handle the procedure that you need to have done in the back of your throat. He said, you need a specialist for this. And he referred me to a surgeon at Georgetown. I met with that surgeon, and he said, you and I are going to become very good friends. We're going to be spending a lot of time together. And what that ultimately meant was that I was going to have 2 different surgeries over a period of months, and that I went on to have a very difficult thyroid surgery, which took about 5.5 or 6 hours. And then for the tumor in the back of my throat, I was scheduled for a procedure called a mandibulotomy, which, to spare you all the details, would mean splitting my jawbone and taking the tumor out, extracting the tumor, and it's estimated as a 13-hour surgery. I was very fortunate that I didn't need that procedure. The tumor was somewhat easy to get out, and I only had a 6-hour procedure to get that tumor out. After my surgery, my doctor had me scheduled for a radioactive iodine treatment, and I had the treatment. And after the treatment, my doctor decided that I shouldn't have contact with my family members for a period of 80 days, which is the amount of time it takes for the radioactive iodine to be completely out of your body. It seemed like a very rash decision, but he was being very conservative based on the fact that I had a 3-year-old and an infant in the house. And his feeling was I could always spend good quality time with my children in 80 days, and at the same time there would be no risk of any kind of contamination to my children. At the time it seemed like a forever journey to wait and a burden to my wife. But as I reflect back on it, I think it was okay. Although, as the expression goes, if I knew then what I know now, there's no way I would have gone down that path. So in 1995, I had my thyroidectomy, and in 1996, I had my metastatic tumor removed, and then I had my first radioactive iodine treatment, which is referred to as a thyroid ablation. And that procedure, while somewhat successful, was not completely successful. And from that point forward, I went through a period of 4 additional radioactive iodine treatments over the next couple of years. In addition, I would finally have to have a 3rd surgery for a metastatic tumor that was non-avid, which means it didn't absorb radioactive iodine. After my 3rd surgery in August of 1998, I had blood work done, and at that time, my doctor gave me the news that we had been hoping for the past 3 years. I was evaluated as disease-free. And that's, in the world of papillary or follicular thyroid cancer, that's the gold standard. And since August of 1998, I've tested as being disease negative the entire time. So I've achieved the goal, and I'd love to say I had something to do with that, but in my case, I've come to the conclusion that it was just good fortune and the perseverance of many. And since that time, people have said, well, why do you do this? Well, I do this because I was very fortunate in that, no, I wasn't fortunate that I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. I was fortunate because I was diagnosed by a doctor who knew his limitations, who connected me with a doctor who didn't have any limitations. And then I got into an environment where I had great endocrine care. And even though I ended up having very conservative nuclear medicine care, I would say I've had great care throughout my journey. In fact, I'm a very inquisitive person, and so I ask a lot of questions. And on 2 separate occasions, my doctor who was taking care of me said, you'll feel better if you have a second opinion, and didn't ask me if I would like one, but insisted that I go get one. And so my doctors were always looking out for me. It became clear in my travels that most people didn't seem to have that luxury or that benefit. And I didn't think that was right. And not everyone could go to the doctors I see. It's simply the math doesn't work. But I felt that we could sort of game the system and give them the opportunity to get the benefit of seeing the great doctors, even if those weren't their assigned doctors. And this was a goal that I shared with many other people, the other 16 people who helped found Thyka. And together, we decided that we were going to create a system of services and programs that we could make readily available to people. And for me, my good fortune continues where my passion for offering the services and programs of Thyka ultimately became a professional opportunity where I now work for Thyka, and on a daily basis, I get to work hard to try to provide these opportunities for all thyroid cancer survivors and their caregivers. When you're diagnosed with cancer, educational information, at least for me, educational information was so very important. But dealing with cancer is much more than what are the facts. It's talking to people who have walked that journey, people who can understand what you're going through. Why are you sad? Well, everyone knows you're sad because you have a cancer diagnosis. But the people who have walked the path understand that there's more than just, I have cancer, so I'm off my game, so to speak. I'm troubled. Will I be around to see my children grow up and graduate from high school? Just simple everyday circumstances that people take for granted. How will I function as a man or a woman? How will I function as a father or a mother? How will I be as a brother or sister? All these things that we all take for granted when we have our good health, those of us who have had a cancer diagnosis, we need help with that. And yes, you can go to a professional for that, but being part of a community is a way to get some of that same balance back without having to go to a professional. No, I'm not saying you shouldn't seek out professional help if that's what you need, but some of it is just being able to talk to people who will appreciate what you've gone through because they've been there. And just being there to say, I get it, and I'm not going to dismiss what you're dealing with. And they won't be the person who says, well, you look fine, so I don't know why you're so anxious about your cancer. This is another thing that those of us with thyroid cancer will hear. You look fine. You know, why just shake it off? I graduated from college with an accounting degree. I guess you could say I was a very black and white person. And I feel like I did good work as an accountant. But when I found myself forced to deal with a cancer diagnosis, it opened up a whole different world for me. I found that I needed questions answered, and I needed people to ask for emotional support. And in my case, I could get some of that support, or even all that support, from my wife, which I'm fortunate for. But I met people who didn't have that same anchor to reach out to and hang on to. And I found that interacting with other people, it really just gave me such a rush that it unleashed something. I found that I had a passion for helping people, and the more I got involved with doing this, the more I wanted to do more to help the next person and to encourage the next person to help the next person. And be careful, you create something great just by each one of us showing passion for the next person and concern for the next person. When I think of where Thyka has come from, we began with 17 enthusiastic people who had an idea, but we had nothing. And we worked to develop a network of support groups. We created our support groups in a box where we help people create a support group who've never done it before. We help them understand how to have a rhythm with running a support group and understand that you're not a doctor. You don't have to be a thyroid cancer expert. That we are fortunate we have advisors who can answer those questions if they go beyond your understanding. But that as a support group facilitator, you're creating an environment where people can share with each other to make each person's journey better. In addition to having the support group network, we've over time created a very comprehensive website with content about the different types of thyroid cancer. There's papillary and follicular thyroid cancer, medullary thyroid cancer, and anaplastic thyroid cancer. So we've created content that people all over the world can easily access. In addition, we've created handbooks for the different kinds of thyroid cancer, and we've created them and put them online so people can download them, again, all over the world. We've translated them into different languages so that people can be more comfortable digesting the content in their native language. And what's next? We're committed that we're going to continue to keep these items up to date and accurate, peer-reviewed, so that our people can rely on them. We're also trying to foster additional collaborative relationships where we can translate materials into different languages, and also to develop additional products so that we continue to strengthen our educational resources for all of our members. And of course, we live in a world where the internet is so much a part of our lives and social media is so much a part of our life, and Thyka has to fit into that environment. So we're working to develop materials that are relevant and beneficial for people through the different social media handles and different products, so that we can reach more and different people at every turn.